Today we are going to discuss the subject of material well-being and the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita was spoken by Krishna to Arjuna when Arjuna wanted to abandon his duty. He wanted to give up the world. He wanted to become a sannyasi. He wanted to become a mendicant. He wanted to become a muni. And he decided that he was going to give all this up because he was sick and tired of all this war that was going on in front of him. So Krishna speaks the entire Bhagavad Gita to teach Arjuna that you must do your duty. It's very important because he is teaching Arjuna how to live life. In fact, he gives Krishna Divya Drishti, divine vision, and explains to Arjuna by giving him a vision at the end of the war, showing that he and his brothers are alive. So he assures him that you will be alive at the end of the war. I am going to teach you now in the Bhagavad Gita how to live life. So this is a life-affirming message. This is a duty-affirming message. This is a karma-busting book. Because Arjuna is terrified of karma. And Krishna is explaining to him that don't worry about karma, just do your duty and do what I am asking you to perform. And your duty demands war, so go ahead and fight the war. Don't worry about karma. This was at a time historically when many kings were being influenced by selfishly salvation-centric, non-violent, non-Vedic philosophies. And they were giving up their kingdoms. And having given up their kingdoms, they were, in fact, leading thousands of people away from daily life, their duties, and encouraging them to become social parasites upon the milieu. So Bhagavad Gita is about how to live life. The Bhagavad Puran is about how to face death. Because this is spoken, the Bhagavad Puran is spoken to a person who has only 7 days left to live. He doesn't know what to do in those 7 days. How can he realize God in that 7-day period? And thus the Bhagavad Sapta, the original Bhagavad Sapta, where he is explained the secrets of how by filling your mind with God in 7 days, you can go back to him. So you cannot mix the two. One is spoken to a person who has given up his kingdom and learning to face death. The other is about a person who is learning to face life. So Bhagavad Gita is about how to live life. Bhagavatam is about how to face death. So the value of the Bhagavad Gita is for a warrior on the battlefield. It's for you because you are a warrior too on the battlefield of life. Whereas the Bhagavad is spoken, if you go into the Bhagavad, it is being recited to the sages of Naimisharanya who have taken renunciation already, who have renounced the world already. So if you follow the message of the Bhagavad Gita, you will never go wrong. I cannot say the same for some of the other texts, depending upon how they're interpreted. and what kind of guidance we receive. But the Bhagavad Gita is clearly about living life. And living life how? As a king, as a prince. Raj Vidya Raj Goyam. It is a knowledge which is meant for the kings. Raj Rishyos Tatha. For kings who have become sages and continue to do their duty. So the question often comes from many people that what do we do if we take up this path and we become so detached from life that we give up our duties, our families, our wives and husbands and children, if we give up our jobs, if we wear orange robes, what will happen to us? First of all, if you've been following what I've been saying in the Bhagavad Gita lecture so far, you will know that is certainly not what Krishna wants. Krishna wants the opposite. Krishna wants you to do your duty and do your duty in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion to Him, without any sense of doership and without avoiding anything. So first of all, remember that unfortunately, somewhere along the way, the Bhagavad Gita has been hijacked by renounced people. And therefore, very often, why very often? Almost all the time. The Bhagavad Gitas you are reading are from people who have renounced the world. But paradoxically, the Bhagavad Gita tells you the opposite. Sanyasastu mahavao dukhamaptum yogatah yoga yukta munir brahma na chirenadi gacchati. For those who take to renunciation of the world without having attained union with God, for them there is only sorrow. Dukhamaptum. They get only sorrow. Yoga yukta munir brahma na chirenadi gacchati. But those who continue to perform their duties in the world in a spirit of devotion and union to God, they attain perfection without delay. Clearly, the Bhagavad Gita prefers working in the world to renouncing the world. Sannyasas karma yogascha nihashreyasya karaubhau tayostu karma sannyasat karma yogo vishishyate. Both renouncing the world and working with devotion can lead to salvation. But between the two, working in the world with devotion is by far superior. This is clear, very clear. But the problem is people are misled. They are misguided by people who are teaching Bhagavad Gita. Not in the spirit of the Bhagavad Gita, and about how to live life, but they're teaching them how to renounce the world. This is ridiculous and very, very, very sad, because the Bhagavad Gita is teaching the opposite. And we won't go into why this came about, but you should understand very clearly that Krishna says very clearly that to do your duty in the world is indeed the means by which one attains God, if it is done in the spirit of devotion and renunciation to Him. The problems come. So people ask, what happens if my son starts listening to Bhagavad Gita? He will renounce the world. He will give up his profession. He will give up his education. And yes, all these things have happened. But all these things have happened because those people listen to people in orange robes. Similarly, people ask, oh, what will happen to my husband? What will happen to my wife? They will renounce the world, leave me alone and the children. Yes, that has happened. But that has happened by following people who wear orange robes. If you follow the Bhagavad Gita as it has been intended by Lord Krishna, it is about doing your duty in the world in a spirit of devotion and renunciation. The most significant and most important verse with which Krishna sets off the entire philosophy is Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachan ma karma phala hetur mate sangostu karmani. You must do your duty. You have a right to do your duty. You have no right to the fruit. Do not imagine yourself to be the doer of activities. Do not abstain or give up your activities or duties. So as long as you do your duties, you don't have to worry. If you stop your duties, if you are lackadaisical about your duties, if you don't perform your duties appropriately, then you better start worrying. So what does Krishna say about material well-being and the Bhagavad Gita? And Krishna says in chapter 7, verse 16, that people come to him for many reasons. Chatur vidha bhajante mam janaha sukritino arjuna artho jignasur artharti jnani cha bharata sabha. So Krishna explains to Arjuna and he says, four kinds of pious people engage in my devotion. Those who are distressed, who are suffering, those who seek knowledge, those who are the seekers of worldly possessions, that is wealth, and those who are situated in knowledge. So it's very important to note here that Krishna clearly says that people who are arthi, the seekers of material wealth, are also people who come to him. And how can he do anything other than fulfill their desires? Krishna says in the Upanishads that my activity, my pastime is fulfilling the desires of everybody. The Bhagavad Gita is indeed an elaboration, an extension of the Isha Upanishad. And in the Isha Upanishad, it clearly declares, Andha tama pravashanti ya avidyam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo ya vidyam rataha. Those who pursue worldly things alone go into great darkness. But those who pursue spiritual things alone go into even greater darkness. It is those who pursue material things and spiritual things side by side, like the two wings of a bird. They are happy in this world and the next. It's very important, which you must learn, lest you get misguided, either directly or indirectly, either by being directly instructed or by implication. A person who works in the world in a spirit of devotion and renunciation is by far superior to a person who has renounced the world. Karmanaivihi samsiddhim astita janakadayah loka sangraham evapi sampashyam kartum arhasi. Krishna says very clearly, those such as King Janaka have attained salvation, liberation, through the performance of his duty as a king, by looking after the welfare of people in general, loka sangraha. And he says, Yad yad acharati shreshtas tattad devataro jana sa yad pramanam kurute lokastad anuvartate. Very clearly, you should understand that those leaders of society guide the rest of society by their acts. For whatever examples they set by their behavior, the rest of the world follows. So before we go on to the full depth of material well-being, please understand that your duty is to perform whatever God has created you for. So whatever is your position in life, whatever is your prarabdha, your job is to fulfill all your obligations. In the 6th chapter, 1st verse, Krishna says, Anashritah karma phalam karya karma karoti yah sa sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir na chakriya. Krishna says very clearly that one who performs his obligatory duties in a spirit of sacrifice and renunciation to the Lord, he is the true sannyasi, he is the true yogi, not one who lights no fire and does no work. So having made it clear that well-being, material well-being is not attained by renouncing the world, but rather by renouncing the world mentally rather than physically, and engaging in the world with great determination. No matter how content you are, you engage in the world with great determination. Santushta satatam yogi yatatma dridha nishchaya Mai arpita mano buddhir yo mad bhaktah same priya. So Krishna says that my devotee, my yogi, is one who is constantly content. Yet he engages in the world with great determination. His mind and intelligence surrendered unto me. Such a person is my devotee. And to that devotee, Krishna helps him in his material life, not just in his spiritual life. Krishna helps the devotee in his material life and helps him to overcome all the obstacles that are there in your life. What are the obstacles in your life? Whatever they are, whether they are related to your job, your profession, your financial situation, your relationships, whether they are related to your health, it doesn't matter. Krishna will help you. Chetasa sarva karmani mai sanyasya matpara buddhi yogam upashrita macchitta satatam bhava macchitta sarva durgani mat prasada tarishyasi atho chetam ahankaran na shroshasi vinamshasi. Always think of me, become my devotee. Be completely absorbed and surrendered to me with your mind and intelligence. By my grace, you will cross over all obstacles in life. And this means material life, please understand. By my grace, you will cross over all obstacles in life, both material and spiritual life. But if you think that you're doing everything, you finish. Atho chetva mahankaran nashvashasi vinams. So this is very important. Still, you have examples of people who are very confused. And you have, in fact, Arjun in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita, the 37th verse. What does Krishna say? What does Arjuna say to Krishna? Arjuna vacha ayati shraddhayo peto yoga chalita manasa aprapya yoga samsiddhim kan gatim Krishna gachati. What is the faith of the unsuccessful yogi who begins on this spiritual path with great faith, but due to an unsteady mind is unable to attain the goal of yoga in this life. Very interesting. Because the implication is that if you take to spiritual life, you lose out in material life. Which I have already explained to you, Krishna in various places in the Bhagavad Gita refutes. Now, Arjuna is asking what will happen after death. If I don't attain moksha and I leave this body, what will happen to me? And Krishna answers him. He continues this question and he says in 6.38, Kachin no bhaya vibrashtash chinna brahm iva nashyati apratishto mahavao vimudo brahmanapati. Does not a person who falls away from his spiritual life get deprived of both material and spiritual success? Doesn't he become a two-time loser, a double-barrel loser? And thus, Arjun, does he not perish like a riven cloud, a broken cloud, a cloud that leaves its mother cloud and moves to another cloud and doesn't succeed in reaching? It vanishes. So does he not suffer in this manner? So Krishna answers Arjun. And Krishna answers Arjun very, very clearly. So any of you who are in doubt about your well-being after leaving this body or in this life, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Partha Naiveha Namutra Vinashastasya Vidyate Nahi Kalyana Krit Kraschid Durgatin Tata Gachati. O Partha, O Arjuna, one who engages on this spiritual path does not meet with destruction either in this world or in the world to come. Na eva iha na amutra. Not in this world nor in the next will you be destroyed. Not in this world nor in the next will you reach or come across circumstances that will overwhelm you. One who strives for God realization is never overcome by evil. Never overcome by evil. Please remember this. So what happens to him after he leaves the body? When he doesn't attain moksha? Krishna explains. First he has said earlier in the second chapter, Neha bikramo nashosti pratyavayana vidyate swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayato mahato varyat. So the first thing he says is that one who takes to this path is saved from the greatest fear. So even if you made a little advancement, you're saved from the greatest fear, which is what? Meeting Yamaraj, going to hell, suffering the torments of hell, you are relieved from that immediately. In the Mohamudgara Stotra, Adi Shankaracharya's disciples declare that Bhagavad-Gita Kinchita Dita Ganga Jallava Kanika Pita Sakradapi Murari Samadhya Kriyate Tatya Yamena Na Charcha Bhajagovindam Bhajagovindam Govindam Bhajamudam. So he said, if you heard Bhagavad Gita even a little bit, if you've taken even a drop of Ganges water, if even once in your life you have called out to God and said, hey God, I am yours, do with me what you will. Such a person does not have to go to hell. He does not have to meet Yamaraj. He does not have to suffer at the time of death. And Krishna points out here in this verse or these verses, Prapya punya kritam lokan ushitva shashvatihi samaha Shuchinam Shrimatam Gehe Yoga Brashta Vijayate. The unsuccessful yogi upon death goes to the abodes of the virtuous. What virtuous? They go to the virtuous planets where saints dwell, where where they enjoy unlimited delights. And having lived there, Shashwati Samaha, for an interminable period of time, having lived in virtuous abodes in heaven, what happens to them? They are reborn again in earth because they haven't attained moksha. But where are they reborn? They're reborn on earth in the family which is both pious and prosperous. Why pious and prosperous? Prosperous so that you don't have to really worry about your livelihood and you can dedicate even more time to performing whatever yoga sadhanas you're engaged in. And pious because you have guidance, you have support, you have tradition, you have culture, you have wisdom. All of this is given unto you. So, therefore, one has to realize that you don't lose out. You don't lose out by taking up spiritual life materially, and you don't lose out spiritually. As Krishna points out right from the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, as long as you obey me and do what I am telling you, you will always benefit materially, spiritually, in this life, next life. In text 2.37, Krishna says, Hato va prakshasi swargam jitva bokshase mahim. Tasmad uttishta kaunteya yuddhaya krita nischaya. So Krishna points out, oh Arjun, if you fight, even if you are slain on the battlefield, which he shows him later is not going to happen, you will still go to heavenly abodes because you are doing your duty and perish. You're dying with your boots on, so to speak. And you will, if you win, then you will gain victory and enjoy this kingdom on earth. Therefore, either go to heaven or rule this earth. Decide. Arise with determination and prepare to do your duty, which is to fight. So therefore, it is so important, so important that you follow Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, please don't get confused by other texts. If you read a text for sannyasis, you will become a sannyasi. But if you follow Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna points out, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, Yatra Partho Dhanurdhara, Tatra Shrir Vijaya Bhutir, Dhruva Nitir Matir Mama. So clearly, Krishna points out, wherever there is Krishna, the Lord of all yoga, wherever there is Arjun, the supreme archer, there will certainly be unending opulence, wealth, victory, prosperity, righteousness. Of this I am certain. So, following Krishna does not mean that you give up your material life. It means that you do your material life in a spirit of devotion and renunciation. It also means that you will not lose out in your material life. You will be protected in this life. By Krishna's grace, you will overcome all obstacles that are there in your life, within your prarabdha. And on leaving this body, you will attain God, which is moksha. But even if you are not able to persist, it will still see to it that you are reborn after a sojourn in heavenly planets. You will come back again in this world in a prosperous as well as pious family. So in all circumstances, your material as well as your spiritual well-being will be constantly preserved. So do not get confused. Do not be afraid. Remember what Krishna says, Nahi kalyana krit kaschid durgatim tata gacchati. One who is engaged on the spiritual path is never overcome by ego. And if you follow this path, you can only do better in your material life. You won't do worse. In the worst of circumstances, God will come and rescue you. By His grace, you will cross over all obstacles in life. And as long as you don't claim credit for all the benefits that you are gaining materially, it's fine. But the minute you think that you are doing all these things, then everything is finished. So Krishna's help, even for material benefit and material welfare, results from remembering Krishna and forgetting yourself. Because it is by forgetting self that Krishna enters your life and gives you both material well-being and spiritual well-being. So I will pause here. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Yes, good morning, sir. Sir, first question is, a lot of people complain that because they're already stuck in this worldly chaos, and that is why they're unable to perform their roles on this planet. So what is the actual
Not
meaning of
able to perform?
their roles on this planet? So what is the actual meaning of performing your duty here?
Performing your duty is becoming the ideal worker, becoming the ideal business person, the ideal professional, the ideal lawyer, ideal doctor, being the ideal employee, also being the ideal wife or the ideal husband or ideal daughter or ideal mother. It is about being ideal in all the roles that you play in life as per your duty. It is difficult to do that because the mind may be already disturbed. When the mind is disturbed, your life will be disturbed because the mind is a light. Have you seen a light shining a light on the uh, hand and projecting it on the wall? You can't control the hand, but if you control the light, automatically everything comes under control. Because your life is the projection of your mind. If your mind is disordered, your life will be disordered. As your mind comes into a peaceful, silent mode, as you engage in a life of surrender to God and doing your duty in a spirit of devotion and renunciation, things will fall in place in your life. It may not occur immediately, but it will occur according to the level of disorder that is already there. It takes time. For example, if you have become 300 pounds in body weight, you cannot lose all that weight overnight. You took a long time to become 300 pounds, you will take similarly time before you can come down from your body weight. Similarly, if your mind is disordered through so many decades of abusing it, giving license to it, then in order for that mind to become ordered, to become silent, to become surrendered, it will take time. And as it becomes ordered and surrendered, you will find that reflection in your life. that your life will also transform itself as your mind changes. Hope that's clear.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So, with that, moving to another question. So, nowadays, people are aware of their rights, but not all of them are aware of their duties. So, how does that affect or imbalances the life?
Those who demand their rights and give up their responsibilities lose both. If you think you can give up your responsibilities and demand your rights, you're guaranteed to lose both. So forget about your rights. You fulfill your responsibilities. And that which God believes to be your right will come to you.
Sure, sir. So, with that, moving to today's last question, and it is, sir, what is the biggest enemy of a being and why, and how one can overcome it?
Pardon?
What is the biggest enemy of a living being?
Your
And
mind is your greatest enemy. And not only it is the greatest enemy, it is the only enemy. You have no enemies in the world. Your only enemy is your uncontrolled mind. Prahlad is sitting on the lap of his father, Hiranyakashipu. And his father is saying, I killed this enemy, I killed that enemy, I'm going to kill this enemy. So Prahlad tells his father, my dear father, please try to understand, you have no enemies. You have only one enemy. No enemies outside, only one enemy inside. And that enemy is your own uncontrolled mind. Krishna says, Chanchalahi mana Krishna pramati balavad dridam tasyam nigram manye vayuri vasaduskaram. You're simply struggling with your mind because your mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and to try to control it is like trying to control the wind. Mamaivanso jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manashastendriyani prakriti krishna. So Krishna points out that you are a fragment of me. And because you're an infinitesimal fragment, you're struggling with your mind and your five senses. But Krishna says, you can't overcome these by yourself. Krishna says very clearly, Daiviyasa gunamai mama maya duratyaya mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. You can't overcome Prakriti, this is your mind and your senses, simply because they are my divine energy and you are infinitesimal. But if you surrender into me, you will cross beyond it.
sure, sir. And how one can actually by surrendering to God, one can overcome its this. Uh,
Exactly. So that was the topic of last time's lecture.
mm, mm,
Surrender in the Bhagavad Gita, the art of surrender.
mm. Absolutely, sir. So, sir, these were our questions for today's session, and thank you so much for sir the session.
Hari Om, Jai Shri Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, sir. Thank you so much.